The best late-night conservative talk show in America, Sackheads Radio. And listen, there are no people better on the air to give you the best in conservative talk than Sackhead Sean and Sackhead Clint. And we're working on the immigration papers for a certain other guy who happens to work here, too. For those who are tuning in around the world to the best in late-night conservative talk, Sackheads Radio.
Sack News. Sack News.
Radio.
Sack News. Sack News.
Radio.
The best late-night conservative talk show in America. In America.
In America.
Into the silo.
And in this web was a large, I'm pretty sure it was the biggest spider I've ever seen.
Good evening, finally. This is the Sackheads Radio Show. I apologize for the technical difficulties. It is beyond my control. It is beyond Sokka's control, and if he can't fix it, damn it, nobody else can. So much to talk about the world of politics tonight. Clint is on location. He should be calling in anytime now, and he will join me on the air. Thank you so much in the chat room. We also want to hear from your call, 347-205-9399. You can talk to the wonderful Jessica, who's on the phone this evening. Sokka's on the board, and it is I, Sackhead Sean, who is in charge of the ship. And if that doesn't scare the hell out of you folks, I don't know what does. Had a ton of talk about Virginia elections, all the stuff with Obamacare, a couple other fun and exciting little things. If you have a chance, check out Conservative Outcry's website this week. He posted, finally Rooster got a wild hair, it would appear. He posted a great article about the Virginia elections. Like it or not, it was well done, and it's definitely worth a read. So check that out at conservativeoutcry.net. One of our friends joining us from the Exceptional Conservative Show, who's in the chat room over there earlier. I truly appreciate it. Ken's a wonderful friend of the show and a smart guy, and he was on fire this evening. So it was great to have that. Get a couple articles. One of them talking about the lax-shooting that happened last week. With I don't even know how to pronounce his last name, but this kid walks in and he's obviously very despondent. And he shot a TSA worker, killed him, shot a couple other people. But Michael Moore decided to take a visit, and Rooster linked this over to me, and this is pretty interesting. Michael Moore said, guns don't kill people, Americans kill people, which, I think that's, it's almost like they're starting to admit that the people that are doing these insane acts are the problem. He's not quite there yet, and let's face it, Michael Moore will never be there because he's absolutely insane. But the simple fact that even Michael Moore, who, let's face it, he's taking control of every tragedy on the face of the planet that he possibly could to make $1, he's done. And for him, he's obviously saying this is the NRA's fault because it was a legal gun, allegedly, legal bullets. That all has yet to be 100% confirmed. But just the fact that he actually said it was a person this time and it wasn't the inanimate object, it is a gun, that's pretty telling. That I think the left and the gun nuts are really starting to realize that they're losing that argument. And so we're making ground. If we can get through the layers upon layers of fat that is Michael Moore's head and actually get some sort of progress a little bit with him to actually touch reality, that's pretty insane. Sokka is telling me that Clint's on the line right now. Clint, are you there from your secret location?
Listen, I've had to go through a lot of tape because the NSA is blocking these calls.
Yeah, well, it's not just you. It's either BTR, Blog Talk Radio, our good friends over there that are going to get another nasty written email from me, or it's the NSA. Now, listen, I have a theory on why it might not be the NSA if you're ready for this.
I am, because I'll tell you, I feel like a running back, bobbing and weaving, trying to get through the line to get to the second level and make a play. That's what I feel like right now, Sean.
My reason that it might not be the NSA is I think they want to hear what we have to say so they know which category to put us in when it comes time to go to the camp.
Okay.
So I don't know if they've shut us off.
I think they've already figured that out. Yeah, it's not like,
really
we're hard to read. Yeah, we're not hard to read. We're not stinking War and Peace. Okay, we're the little engine that's good. We're that transparent. You pretty much know where we stand. We're like a Dick and Jane book. Okay, it's
but
not
I think they
difficult
have to get
to figure out the plot.
In order to get the trace, and you know how Sacco has it all set up, that it goes through all the different channels and switches, so it makes it difficult to find us.
Right.
You know,
right.
he called that Operation Trigger. I don't know what he meant by that, but that's what Sacco likes to call things. So he did that, and so I think it's harder and harder for them to actually find out where the silo is being held.
Okay.
I'm just saying, that's a theory to
but
go
I'm
with.
not in the silo, remember?
No, you're the Wolverine tonight. You're the variable. They don't know where you are. I don't even know where you are. You're on assignment.
They don't.
You wouldn't tell me what it was about. That was fine. But I appreciate you finding a way to tap into the mainframe. Is that what they call it, Sacco? Do they still call it mainframes? Okay, you can call it a mainframe. You tapped in and you got out, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, listen, we don't talk about my other life right now.
Right.
So you know where I'm calling you from?
Where?
I'm calling you from the pit of liberalism.
Pit of liberalism.
The pit of listen. I went to the belly of the beast.
You're in Biden's underwear?
Very close. Very close. All I'm saying is he needs to shave his paint. Listen, that's all I'm saying. I'm not saying any more than that.
Oh.
I am in downtown Los Angeles, California.
Dear Lord. How are you even okay?
Belly, because nobody knows who I am. Listen, I got a ponytail wig, okay? I'm wearing a ponytail and a business suit, and I fit right in. I have some skinny pants as part of the suit, so one of those new fashion, right, single button single button down the front, and I fit in down here. I look like a liberal hipster.
Do you have the horn-rimmed glasses?
I do. I do.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Hey, I want to start off, and we have heavy stuff to get into. This is kind of heavy to me. Kevin Blackistone, who's a professor from the University of Maryland, he was on ESPN the other night, and he was talking about Northwestern University is wearing these football jerseys that are adorned with the American flag. And I found this, I think I found it on the Blaze, but it could have been anywhere else. No, it was the Blaze. And he's essentially upset that they're wearing these uniforms that are draped with the American flag, whatever the reason is. They've changed it. It's like a specialty uniform. You know how some teams have that now.
Yes.
And he kind of went off. Essentially, the long and short of it is saying is, they're playing these war anthems before the games, and when is this going to get separated from the sport? I'm trying to find the best quote. I had one in there highlighted. But essentially he said this is way out of line, and, you're conflating a war anthem with a simple game. And when you have military flyovers, all the other military symbolism goes on in the sport. So you have these schools, professional teams do it as well, that they wear these in tribute to the country, to soldiers that have fallen. They started after Pat Tillman, who was the former Cardinal safety that after the 9/11 became an Army Ranger and was killed, when it really started picking speed in football. A man that I could truly describe as a hero because he gave up what was everything he wanted to do. He played professional sports. I mean, that's pretty impressive. And then to give that up to become an Army Ranger to serve his country, the man was a hero. And here comes this Blackistone, not Blackistone, Blackistone, out of Maryland, who's saying that essentially there's no place in sports for this sort of behavior.
You know what? I think he fails to realize that our men and women in uniform are citizen soldiers, and
yes.
we are fortunate in that we have a volunteer military. Our soldiers are citizen soldiers, and as a result, if they want to honor citizen sports, I see no problem with that. I didn't know that he was a communist, so I think, maybe his point of view is we should nationalize all sporting events. I don't know. I'm not sure what his issue that is.
I don't.
I don't know. Maybe
any person in this country, whether you have a microphone, as we do in front of us or not, right, wrong, whether you agree with wars, you don't agree with wars, anyone that's willing to pay tribute on a national level, a collegiate level, or any level, the fact that you would do anything to squash that, to me, is mind-boggling.
Yeah,
and it says
he's an idiot.
Right.
It says he's a stinking idiot. And here's, I have another point on that also, that idiot.
Go ahead.
So and that's a very nice term that I'm using right now, especially given my history tonight. So
right.
If the military wants to honor the sporting event, the college, the playoff game, the World Series, the Super Bowl, whatever it is, if they want to honor the athletes by a flyover, what's the problem with that? I mean, it seems like the military, in turn, is providing an honor or a salute of sorts to the people that are out there, the private citizens, who are engaged in this sporting event.
Right. Well, and to me, I've seen many flyovers, and the one thing I think of is the exceptionalism of this country. And it's not. I don't take that lightly when you see a military flyover. I mean, that shows you just in part how amazing we are as a nation, just to see that craft up in the air. And your flying experience, you certainly have probably seen it too. And but for me, just like you said, it's a tribute to both sides. It's the people giving the tribute, and the sports team or the whatever collegiate team it is, giving a tribute to the military, and it's the military saying thank you to the people. And we talked about this, I talked about this a little bit on Twitter during the, and I hate to bring this up, but the Red Sox had their celebration parade. But as you watched it, you saw that it wasn't about the World Series as much as it was two sides, the sports team and the city celebrating each other. There was a lot of celebration of the law enforcement and the first responders who responded to the marathon tragedy. There was nobody saying, "Oh, why are they here? Why do we have? Why do they play the national anthem?" They sang "God Bless America" at the marathon finish line, where the explosion happened with some Red Sox players out there. And not one person. And I challenge you to find somebody who thought that there was no place in sports for that. And it falls,
that knucklehead on ESPN may feel that way. I figured it out, Sean. I figured out what the military flyover is all about. I have an alternate theory. Listen, clearly it's the home team that arranged it and is using it as a threat to the visiting team.
It's a show of force, right? You're saying.
I'm saying it's a show of force. Yeah. And you know what? That's not that big of a stretch, given the story that former Navy SEAL told about the military commanders asking some of their troops if they're prepared to fire on U.S. citizens in case of insurrection.
Well, that's an amazing segue you did. It's almost like you planned this ahead of time. It's bizarre. So, yeah,
look,
there's a Navy SEAL by the name. Go ahead.
I think
nobody would ever believe that we planned anything on the show anyhow, so what difference does it make?
I think that the ESPN pinhead is correct in his assertion that maybe they shouldn't be doing this in this threatening manner.
So you're now in full agreement.
I don't know what I am. I just confused myself. I think I just argued both sides of the case, and I don't know what I believe now.
Well, you need to figure that out. I'm just telling you. But you referenced this. It is so bizarre not to look over at you and get your responses. So you referenced this Navy SEAL veteran. His name's Ben Smith. Claims military leaders are asking armed forces members if they're willing to disarm Americans if forced to do so in the future. And he said this not once but twice. He was on Fox saying this. He was also on the Alex Jones show, which we've talked about Alex Jones in the past. But but here's a Navy SEAL veteran, and I don't know how vetted he is, and I don't know about his military history.
His story is partially corroborated in the fact that there was an instance, and I want to say it was 2007, but I'll have to check the dates on that to be fair to our listeners, where Marines in basic training were being asked the same sort of thing, and several Marines stood up and said, whoa, 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 hey, this is out of line. And it was actually...
You're referring to 1997.
Okay, 97, not 2007. Thank you. So this has come up before, and so I firmly believe. Now, granted, we haven't vetted this former SEAL either, but we have no reason to doubt his veracity. And given the history, the fact that there is documented cases of soldiers being asked this, in this case, the United States Marines from 1997, I think it lends incredible credence to this case. I thought it was 2007. You might be right, because I thought it was during the...
No, it's 1997. I was just able to pull up the notes we had on it. It was at 29 Palms. I know I talk funny. Navy Lieutenant Commander Ernest Guy Cunningham was doing a survey allegedly to ask Marines if they would fire upon U.S. citizens, and it was part of a quote unquote academic project. And many believe that they were probing.
First of all, his name is Ernest, and second of all,
hey, Ernest Portline, I mean, can't just throw Ernest out there. Ernest T. Worrell, there's a bunch of good Ernests.
Ernest goes to camp.
I think the fact that his middle name was Guy actually hurts him more than Ernest does. But just go on.
I think that's a gender identification issue, right? Like his parents had to reinforce that he was in fact a guy. Yeah, named Ernest.
That's how his parents were able to tell the other siblings apart.
Right. And then with a name like Cunningham, I'm pretty sure you have to be all-American member of Happy Days. Maybe he was like the brother that disappeared after the first season of the show from Happy Days. Maybe he was right. Maybe he was that Cunningham, or like some evil cousin from some spinoff somewhere. And he needed to do this project to kind of get his name out there to remind everybody who he was. And it's just a theory. I'm just spitballing here.
Well, so you have this report. You have the 1997 thing. There was recently a U.S. Army military police training manual that was leaked last summer that detailed specifics on civil emergency scenarios in which troops would be permitted to fire upon fellow Americans. The, quote, civil disturbance operation manual was drafted in 2006. The training materials detail how the military and their assets would help both local and state authorities maintain the peace should mass riots, civil unrest, or martial law declaration occur. Page 20 of the manual reports states that warning shots will not be fired by dissidents on U.S. soil. Oh, when confronted by dissidents on the U.S. soil. Now, we've talked about this in the past, Clint. You and I certainly have, both on and off the air. Is it really starting to get to the point? And we've covered, for the last 2 years anyhow, Clint, you and I, we've covered stories. There was the one in Massachusetts where they were using the evacuated school. They were flying Blackhawks in. There was another one in Florida last year where they were doing a joint operation, but they had Blackhawks and heavy equipment that was being used. Is this something, and I know the answer before I ask you, but I want to get as to why. Why is this something that we need to start worrying about? If the government is starting to prepare for civil unrest, what does that tell you is wrong with this country right now?
Well, I mean, a lot. There's a lot wrong with this country right now, but you also have the Homeland Security stockpiling huge quantities of ammunition. And that concerns and armored vehicles and everything else. And here's what concerns me about. Yeah, here's what concerns me about that. I foresee a push in the form of the TSA, the Transportation Security Administration, or through Homeland Security, a push for a national uniformed police department. And I say that because if you look at the TSA's mission statement, they talk about all forms of transportation. It doesn't specify trains and airplanes and buses. It says all forms of transportation. Look, your personal car is all forms of transportation. Your tennis shoes, your walking is a form of transportation. Your bicycle is a form of transportation. We already have these agents and their Viper teams riding trains and commuter trains and so forth. in addition to being at airports and whatnot. So they're not limited to airport screeners, folks. And I think this is kind of a segue or a move towards that nationalized police force, which I have a major problem with due to the fact that countries and Nazi Germany and so forth, they had these nationalized police forces. We are not supposed to have that. We have to be very, very careful here. Posse Comitatus was passed for a reason in this country, that the founders had. They were very, very scared of any kind of standing force. That's why law enforcement was kept at the local levels, city levels and county levels. Up until the Civil War, police officers typically didn't wear uniforms for the most part, because people in this country were so not anti-military, but anti-having military or a uniformed presence among the people. It wasn't until after the Civil War that uniforms for law enforcement agencies really became more commonplace. And again, that was due to the fact that so many people had served in uniform in the Civil War on both sides, that being in uniform was just what the men of the day did, and that's who went into law enforcement back then. So law enforcement has really evolved in that sense. The thing about, I know there's been some uproar, and I'll get to your point here in a moment. Believe me, this is just kind of some background to it. There's kind of a push right now in some of the libertarian circles about, well, what do law enforcement and SWAT teams need armored vehicles for and these weapons for? And here's why I say that is important for local law enforcement agencies to have, big picture. Look, if local agencies have that capability, and the Boston bombers is a prime example, okay, where you have, what if it was an active shooter, or you have these terrorists that become active shooters for extended period of time. If law enforcement, local agencies have the armored vehicle, which, by the way, they don't get those military surplus all with machine guns porting out of everything, okay? They get them stripped down. They're for defensive purposes because they stop bullets. You can put law enforcement officers, you can put cops into a zone like that and protect them to where they can deal with that particular incident, and it keeps the capability in the hands of local law enforcement. I mean, we saw SWAT teams. Come out as a result of the Texas Tower incident in 1966. Charles Whitman, when he shot people from the tower. So, but the fact that Homeland Security now has that, or people think only the military should have that, well, now you take that capability away from local law enforcement, and you're almost forcing the military to be in this position to deal with these types of insurrections or threats like this manual is you're talking about. So that's one side of the issue that these people that say cops should have that stuff needs to keep in mind. But to answer your question more directly,
I want to comment on that real quick. Hold on, before you answer the question, we're up against the break. I want to comment on that. I was reading a chat room a couple weeks ago, and there was a guy who was former military, so he said, I couldn't vet him, and a guy who worked for a local police department. And the guy with the local police department essentially said, yeah, we want to get as many tools as we can that are former military or, like those big armored vehicles and stuff like that, because if the federal government decides that they want to declare martial law or some other illegal act, we want to be able to defend our citizens. And that was something that I probably hadn't looked at before that. And you and I have talked about on this before, that a majority of those in law enforcement and the military, that if it came down to that, would not act upon American citizens. And they would defend those citizens against, just like they would, enemies foreign and domestic, just like the oath that they would take. So that was his whole point. And the military guy was arguing and saying, well, they don't have a right to that. They don't have a right to that. They don't have a right to that. Well, if you look at our fire department, EMTs, a lot of that stuff, they all the equipment that they've gotten for years and years and years have been surplus military, just because it's the cheaper option, like you said before. So I think that's something, too, that if you live in a good city or a good county, and somebody in the chat room, Flycatch, just said support your local sheriff, you live in a place like that you know that law enforcement is actually going to be there for you. It may not be a bad thing, and I understand the libertarian point of view is, why are they strategically, I've heard this, well, they're strategically putting these resources in cities, and that way they're already there when the military gets there. You know what? If the military is going to show up, or the federal agencies are going to show up, they're bringing it with them. We don't go, my point for this was, we don't go to Afghanistan and use the equipment that's there. They bring it with them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that's something.
No. What I was going to say is you're absolutely right. But there is a large community. And I'm not going to say most of the military because I don't know, or even most. But I know several cops. I know several firefighters. I know several people in the military. And look, there are people in there that understand their oath and understand what is legal and what is illegal. And I understand that there's a push in the Obama administration, or earlier there was in the earlier part, to really change over a lot of the commands in the military, people who would be more willing to act against U.S. citizens. But there is a large group in the military and law enforcement and fire service and so forth that would uphold their oath and protect the Constitution and the citizens. And hey, there's a whole group, Oath Keepers, which of course is listed as a terrorist or an extremist organization.
Southern Poverty Law Center.
Poverty Law Center.
These people that serve their citizens and take an oath to uphold it. How dare they? They are terrorists and terrorist organizations, according to the Southern Poverty Law Center. Hey, Clint, why don't we hold it there for a second? We're going to take a break.
Hey, Clint, I just want to say your chair is very warm.
Shaka's in your chair, but he's been throwing things at me for the last couple minutes because we've run over. So stay on the line. Thank you, everyone who's chatting in the chat room, 347-205-9399. If you want to share your opinion, this is the Sackheads Radio Show, back in 3.
Warm chair.
Hey, if you care about what's going on in the world, you cannot afford to miss my show. Hi, this is Andrea Kaye, your host of The Andrea Kaye Show. It's not always about the money. Okay, it is always about the money, but it's also about politics, pop culture, and you. The only thing street about this show is the smarts. There's a reason they call me Dynamite in a Dress, and you'll find out why when you listen Tuesday mornings at 10 on Financial News and Talk.
Hello, I'm Paul, a student at Hillsdale College. Here is my professor, Dr. Larry Arnn, on the separation of church and state.
America's founders believed in the separation of church and state, in that the country was not to have an official religion or an official sect. But that did not mean that government was to be hostile to religion, or even indifferent to religion, as many today argue. In fact, America's founding document, the Declaration of Independence, includes both a reference to God as the author of the laws of nature and a confident assertion that human beings are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Far from being hostile or indifferent to religion, America's founders understood the theology of the Declaration to be an essential part of the education of citizens.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.org.
How you doing? John Grant here. When I'm not slaving over a hot microphone on the 405radio.com Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern, I check out Sean and Clint here at Sackheads Radio. We all appreciate the best political bloggers, writers, and commentators. We either get them on our shows or we make fun of them, as it should be. So check us out live Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern or forever on the podcasts on the 405radio.com.
3, 2, 1.
Hey, this is Sackhead Clint. I want to take this opportunity to thank all the wingnut leaders throughout the world, to give our men and women of the armed forces a job, as well as all the anarchists, terrorists, and Occupy folks that give our men and women in uniform on the home front, firefighters, law enforcement personnel, and first responders, job security here in the States as well. So thank all you wingnuts out there. This is Sackhead Clint saying have a good day.
Now back to Clint and Sean on Sackheads Radio, radiating urgency and quality.
And we're back for part 2 here of the Sackheads Radio Show. Before we went to break, we're talking about these claims by former Navy SEAL, member of SEAL Team 6, allegedly, Ben Smith, who claims the military leaders are asking armed forces members if they're willing to disarm Americans. And then we went on and talked about federalizing or a federal police force that would be more like a local law enforcement and extended out through it here. Hey, Clint, you brought up the TSA before we went to break and what's in their little mission statement. And we already kind of have, there's also another agency that they call the Federal Protective Services, FPS. I don't know what their mission statement is, but I could see an expansion of them slowly at first.
I don't necessarily. Look, there's a uniform federal police department kind of goes around and checks the federal buildings, I guess, and then there's like at federal courthouses, you have armed security there who are sworn when they're on duty through the marshal's office. But just based upon the far-reaching nature of the Department of Homeland Security and TSA and how far they've already gone, and I bring up those diaper teams, I can see that very easily rolling into a nationalized police force of sorts, even if they're dealing, they say, solely with transportation, right? It's going to become like the Commerce Clause of the Constitution. Well, everything has to do with commerce. Well, these knuckleheads are going to say, well, everything has to do with transportation. Right, hey, go ahead.
That's the scary part about all this. And, one of the other things, too, a lot of governments have done, and I know Massachusetts did this when I lived there, and is all of a sudden they pick one agency and bring everything in under its umbrella. So because money saving or whatever they want to call it, and I know growing up in Massachusetts, we had state capitol police, we had registry of motor vehicles police, and what they did is they brought it all under the state police. And it would be interesting to see if the feds start doing that with some of the agencies that maybe they don't necessarily control or they don't think that they have a control on.
But that's okay. That's okay at a state level, right? Because it's local. The states have the right to do that. We're talking, on a federal level, you don't. And I believe your question was what would happen if?
Right.
Look, it all goes into, I believe that there's a reason that the federal government is preparing for this, and I understand that the military needs to have a contingency for this. But if you're talking about firing on citizens, that's a big deal. Now, are you talking about insurrection against the government, where you have a militia group? And I'm not talking about an organized militia group. I'm not talking about a group like that is acting as part of a elected body. Okay, like a California military, which they have, which is, it's not National Guard. California has a military. We talked about this on a prior show. 22 states have it, including, I think, Puerto Rico, where it's a state military. Even though the Constitution says that states shall not have its own military force, because forces were being called away, states didn't have the resources available to deal with emergencies at home. Congress authorized the states to have a military. California has one, for example. So if you're talking about a force like that has public representation, or a force of citizens, because we all are unorganized militia also, right, private citizens, according to the United States Code, that's the current federal law. If you have a group of unorganized militia that is represented by an elected body, kind of like the Continentals did at the beginning of the Revolutionary War, it's a different story because now you have a large elected group of people that are representing a state and area or whatnot that is overseeing that military, as opposed to an independent, what some groups consider a militia force now, that's operating independently, not at the direction of any citizen oversight. I think that's where you run into a true insurrection. And that's a very dangerous thing, and I understand the military perhaps needing to deal with that because you're talking about potentially an act of war against this country versus an act of secession or something of that nature, which I believe would be different. For example, Texas. There's been talk about Texas seceding by its attorney general or whatnot. That's a different story. If Texas used its military in order to attempt to secede if the U.S. government tried to stop them. I believe that's a different situation because you have elected officials in Texas of a state, right, that are elected by the people at large, utilizing that military in order to secede to prevent oppression or whatnot. Different than a small local militia group or a group of individuals that consider themselves to be a form of organized militia to insurrect against the U.S. government. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So,
no, you
so
couldn't have laid it out any better.
Yeah, so I can understand training in an urban environment for that purpose. But training for martial law or for any kind of major riots, that is a civilian law enforcement function. And I could even perhaps see National Guard function, which is controlled by the state, by the governor of the state. I can definitely see like a state military reserve in that function. But as far as the United States federal military or the National Guard acting on behalf of the military at the direction of the federal government to where they now essentially become part of the United States military force, I think is absolutely unconstitutional. And I think that the local states would have a right to stand up against that. Look, I don't ever want to see that happening. We're talking in theory here, and do I believe that they would have a legal right to do so?
Well, the unfortunate part, it seems as we go more and more, and this country becomes more and more divided, that there's more talk of this. And if I say it's one of those things. If they're planning for that contingency plan, there's a reason, and that's what bothers me.
Sean, I would be more worried about this if there were any jurisdictions in the United States that had a successful vote to secede from either their state or their country. I would be more worried about it.
Funny you should mention that. There's 5 in Colorado that did. Again, there's that whole pre-planning thing that worked out amazingly. Really quick though, the TSA has a new recruitment commercial on. You want to hear it? And
no.
They're trying to recruit more people. Now, I think it's only about 26 seconds. I think you should listen to it. It's pretty telling.
I want rustlers, cutthroats, murderers, bounty hunters, desperados, mugs, pugs, thugs, nitwits, half-wits, dimwits, vipers, snipers, con men, Indian agents, Mexican bandits, muggers, buggerers, bushwhackers, hornswagglers, horse thieves, bull dykes, train robbers, bank robbers, ass-kickers, shit-kickers, and Methodists!
For those who argue that the government's trying to remove religion, they obviously want Methodists. So that's good. They want to get Methodists recruited to the TSA.
Listen, I didn't know that was a TSA commercial. I actually thought it was a list of people Obama was trying to appoint to these various positions.
I think if you go down the list of all of his czars, you could probably knock them off one by one by one.
Right. Either that or those are the people that are taking your calls for the healthcare line. Either way.
That could have been the recruiting for a lot of things. The navigators, people who designed the Obamacare website. I can keep going.
Listen, I'm sorry. I can't hear the word navigator without thinking of Flight of the Navigator, that old Disney movie, with like the one alien eyeball that looks at the little kid while he flies the spaceship in that Pee Wee Herman voice.
Compliance. That one? That was every single time that's what he was asked. That's what the robot would say. No, obviously.
Which is funny because that's what the Obama administration wants from us. So that's perfect.
Exactly. Total and absolute compliance. So you brought up the, you'd be more worried if there were counties voting secede from states, et cetera, et cetera.
Right, yeah, I'd be worried if there were actual votes of public officials to secede. I would be more worried about that, But then again, we're talking that whole scenario where you have elected officials representing a population.
Okay, so in Colorado, 5 counties voted to secede. You have Phillips County, Yuma County, Kit Carson County, Cheyenne County, and Washington County, all voting to start the secession process yesterday. This is after, 2 different federal lawmakers were recalled, and they're starting the process for more, I believe.
They were the local, the state, the senators within the state, right? That voted for gun control.
Yeah. Yes. I'm sorry. The senators within the state. So Colorado is right now a very.
Awesome.
It is. Well,
be
5 counties.
in one of those 5 counties.
But it's kind of a pretty telling thing of what's going on in this country is you have people who are outside these major cities who decisions are being made. We talked about this with the state of Jefferson for the Northern California folks a couple of weeks ago. You have these major cities that are essentially jam-packed with liberals who want free handouts that are making a lot of the decisions for these counties who are further out in rural areas and not listening to the constituents that live in those counties. And we can go into Virginia last night. You want to talk about a massive liberals in one area changing the entire state. But you have
I was just going to bring that up.
You have these 5 counties that are in the northeast corner of Colorado that are pissed, for lack of a better word. And, it's funny. You look at liberals responding to this, and a lot of liberals are saying, oh, they're just doing this to prove a point. They're just doing this to get their message across. And I've seen even a couple conservatives, albeit RINOs, say, oh, it's the same thing. They just want a voice to be heard. No, they're pissed. They wouldn't be voting for this if there wasn't a reason. They want to get out. Some of them want to, there's some conversation as to what they want to do. Some people want to hook up with Wyoming. Some people want to become northern Colorado, et cetera, et cetera. But the simple point is they're pissed off. They have a generally conservative state out in the rural areas being run by a liberal capital, which here in California, I completely understand that. And the conservative people are not in Colorado. A lot of it came down to the gun rights. They made all those crazy 2A laws or anti-2A laws, if you will, after the shooting at the Aurora Theater. We talked about this before. It's a knee-jerk legislation where we're going to have everybody feel better, so this could never happen again. They pass all these ridiculous laws. You're not going to stop crazy people from doing crazy things. You can't legislate insanity out. So
listen, here's the problem.
Okay.
Well, hang on a second. On what you just said. Look, if you outlaw guns, if guns are illegal, if fully automatic weapons are illegal, listen, mass murder is already illegal. Yeah. Murder is already illegal. You've already outlawed
Shooting somebody is illegal. Robbing somebody is illegal. Blowing people up are illegal. We've already had laws for all this.
On the same day as the Newtown massacre, there was a major edged weapons attack in China at a school where 22 school children were slashed with an edged weapon.
Right.
And edged weapons attacks at schools and those mass casualty incidents are more prevalent in China than the shooting incidents are here in the United States. So Michael Moore can suck it. What were you going to say?
Well, we say that all the time. But what's funny is, we go back to, we're talking about Colorado, and you brought up guns and illegal. The LAX shooter last week, the night before, and that got all the press. I mean, you couldn't turn anything on without live this and live that, and we're live on the scene, and we're trying to sneak reporters in, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Chicago, the night before, Halloween night, in Chicago, there was 2 people murdered and 6 shot, I believe all in the same incident. I had to dig to find that. Detroit today, I don't know if you heard, it was, I think it was 7 people shot in Detroit and 3 are dead in one incident. That's nowhere on the news right now. Those are blips in the screen. So like they do with a lot of incidents involving active shooter, et cetera, mass shootings as they like to call it, they don't cover, amazingly, the cities where it's happening. And I hate to say it, it seems like liberal media doesn't care black kids shoot each other, but they do care if a white guy shoots another white guy because that sells That sells an agenda, and that also sells media.
Oh, and here's the other point about the LAX shooter, right? The LAX shooter was specifically going after TSA agents, right? He was specifically seeking out TSA agents because he was angry at the government, and it really fits their agenda. Look, that profile of the LAX shooter is really the exception to these rapid mass murder people that commit these crimes, these rapid mass murders. That's not the typical profile you see. But let's take this profile. Let's take this profile, though. Let's take the profile and go down the road that the liberal media wants us to go with this story, that they insinuate that they don't really push you all the way there. Okay? This was somebody that was anti-government, fed up with government intrusion, who is probably the narrative they're trying to paint right-wing, right, armed with this rifle that went in to target agents of the government. Look, we just talked about this
within 2 hours, I saw his name and Tea Party linked in the same article.
Exactly. And look,
that was 2 hours after they announced his name.
So again, we're looking at a very isolated incident, which I'll tell you right now, I denounce that act. That's a cowardly act, and he's a complete turd for engaging in that. And listen, if there were a group of him, if it was him and 5 others, 6 others, 7 others, 20 others that were going after federal agents or federal law enforcement or TSA or whatever as a form of insurrection, almost like we were talking about, right? In some form of militia force, which is a term that I take umbrage with, anyways. But listen, that is not a lawful. That is not a lawful thing. That is not a lawful resistance because they are not represented, right? They have no civilian elected body like we talked about, a state legislature or something controlling that like the founders have. That is an insurrection, and that is illegal, and that does need to be dealt with. And I will denounce that every time. And I will, listen, we're obviously conservative. This is an opinion show, and we will be the first ones to denounce the actions of him if he was in fact right-leaning or Tea Party or whatever the heck it was. So I'll follow that narrative through that this liberal media is trying to paint. But the fact of the matter is that psychopath is not representative of the Tea Party, nor
of any
representative. Well, I'm sure he represents some groups out there, right, that do think it's okay to rise up in that fashion. There are a few of those out there.
But that has yet to even be proven. And that's the thing that, that's the narrative that I'm going with is let's look at facts here because
but that's why I just said, Sean, that's why I just said let's follow this down the road where they're trying to let us go, and it still leads to the same place. It still leads us to it's an illegal act. It's a mass murder that he committed, and we completely denounced it. So where else is there for them to go with it? I mean, they're trying to paint this picture. Okay, we just took it all the way down the road they wanted us to go. Now what?
Right. Well, I mean, let's face it. We've talked on the show time and time again, and a lot of people that we interact with say the same thing. This is an insanity issue. And, again, there were signs from what is being reported so far that he was a troubled individual. A couple of his roommates said that he's become despondent. His family said he's separated. He's talked about suicide. As a matter of fact, law enforcement in New Jersey was at his house at the time of the shooting because his family was reporting that he was alleging that he was suicidal. So, again, it comes down to another mental health issue that this government, everybody ignores. And we've talked about this time and again. It's not the gun, like I said at the top of the show. It's the person, and same thing with McNichols in Oklahoma City and anyone else that wants to hurt mass amount of people. They're going to find a way to do it. But liberal media once again decided, hey, I'm going to put this in the forefront, and you're going to have fatheads like Michael Moore and Piers Morgan and all these other idiots who are going to come out and say, oh, look, it's a Tea Party lunatic, and this is what the government wants because you have the president in the last couple of weeks and people in his administration calling us extremists and that we don't want government and blah, 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 blah. this fits the bill, and a lot of people fit right into it.
Or they fall right into it.
Feed right into it is what I meant to say. And that's one of the things that drives me nuts. We only have a few minutes left in this segment, and I want to talk about one more. Go ahead if you have one more point to make.
Yeah. Look, I was going to say it's evil. And look, mental health care kind of went by the wayside when you had court rulings ruling against asylums and so forth because, it violates their civil rights. Listen, when they were all in asylums, they got the care they needed. They were not out on the streets like we have all over in the major cities today, and they weren't available to go and commit these acts. You could have somebody committed and spend time living in an asylum and get the care they need and also protect society at the same time. That's one point I wanted to make with it. And another point I wanted to make is, let's say he was completely sane. I don't think that's the case, but let's say he was. Let's say he was completely sane and he committed this act because he legitimately did not like TSA and wanted to do violence against them for whatever reason because he didn't like them. He didn't think they were lawful authority or whatever his excuse would be. Let's go down that road, okay? Because it's still a criminal act. It's still a mass murder event, an active shooter event, and we still denounce it. And
it's still inexcusable.
Absolutely, still inexcusable. So, whatever the cause of this particular individual is, whether it's the fact that he legitimately didn't like TSA and was completely sane, or whether he has mental health issues combined with the fact he didn't like TSA, it's still an inexcusable act that nobody wants to see. But I think you're absolutely right. When the mental health situation needs to be dealt with in the country, and it was dealt a huge blow with lawsuits that really ended their confinement and treatment in asylums. What else do you want to get to?
Let's see. I had one more thing about 2A, and then we're going to move on after the break. We'll talk about some election stuff and the president, some of the comments that have made this week. Real quick, Colorado schools allow teachers to carry guns. School officials in Briggsdale, Colorado, voted to approve concealed carry for handguns, with teachers providing the education. The educators participate in ongoing training, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Great thing. Finally,
is Sacco still sitting in my chair?
No, I moved him.
Oh, I need somebody to clap into my microphone.
There you go.
Thank you.
It's a small town that's 20 minutes away from the nearest sheriff's station or police department. There's a minimum 20 minutes response time per the Briggsdale superintendent. They felt that they had to do this, so in case, and listen, Colorado is the home of Columbine, we all remember that. So someone that understands that we do need to be able to protect our students and our children, because let's face it, law enforcement can't be everywhere. In a lot of ways, you don't want them everywhere. I think they should be in schools. I think we need to protect our children as much as we can. But I think this is a brilliant move, and I hope that a lot more, I know there's been a couple out there, but I hope a lot more school districts start to follow.
I agree. Listen, 20 minutes response time. If they go on lockdown at an active shooter event, 20 minutes is a long time for a shooter to be able to get into even a locked door and commit mass murder before law enforcement's getting there. So I think it's absolutely the right call to make. A group of unarmed people, if they band together, may be able to overcome an active shooter event. I look at Flight 93, not an active shooter event, but certainly a group of people that overpowered some terrorists and were able to win. But that is so few and far. I mean, how many times do you see a fight on the street or something of that nature, and people aren't getting involved to break it up or to help? They're on their cell phones videoing it, or these events they're on Twitter right away. So I think it's absolutely the right call.
I agree with you. It's absolutely the right call. You know what else is a long time? You said 20 minutes. The next 3 minutes when we're going to be in commercials.
That is an eternity, and I'm going to pour myself a drink.
Awesome. We'll be back at 3 of the Sackheads Radio Show, 347-205-9399. I know we have calls on hold. We're going to try to get to them. Be back.
If you care about what's going on in the world, you cannot afford to miss my show. Hi, this is Andrea Kaye, your host of The Andrea Kaye Show. It's not always about the money. Okay, it is always about the money, but it's also about politics, pop culture, and you. The only thing street about this show is the smarts. There's a reason they call me Dynamite in a Dress, and you'll find out why when you listen Tuesday mornings at 10 on Financial News and Talk.
Hello, I'm Paul, a student at Hillsdale College. Here is my professor, Dr. Larry Arnn, on the separation of church and state.
America's founders believed in the separation of church and state, in that the country was not to have an official religion or an official sect. But that did not mean that government was to be hostile to religion, or even indifferent to religion, as many today argue. In fact, America's founding document, the Declaration of Independence, includes both a reference to God as the author of the laws of nature and a confident assertion that human beings are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Far from being hostile or indifferent to religion, America's founders understood the theology of the Declaration to be an essential part of the education of citizens.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.org.
How you doing? John Grant here. When I'm not slaving over a hot microphone on the 405radio.com Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern, I check out Sean and Clint here at Sackheads Radio. We all appreciate the best political bloggers, writers, and commentators. We either get them on our shows or we make fun of them, as it should be. So check us out live Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern or forever on the podcasts on the 405radio.com.
3, 2, 1.
Hey, this is Sackhead Clint. I want to take this opportunity to thank all the wingnut leaders throughout the world to give our men and women of the armed forces a job, as well as all the anarchists, terrorists, and Occupy folks that give our men and women in uniform on the home front, firefighters, law enforcement personnel, and first responders, job security here in the States as well. So thank all you wingnuts out there. This is Sackhead Clint saying have a good day.
Now back to Clint and Sean on Sackheads Radio, radiating elegancy and quality.
And we're back here for part 3 and a third, only because I watched Naked Gun this week, of the Sackheads Radio Show, 347-205-9399. On special assignment, Clint is joining us on the phone. Clint, your choice, elections or Obamacare?
I will take elections for 100, Sean.
Elections for 100. This moderate Democrat was just elected governor of New Jersey.
Douchebag.
Try again. You have to give me his exact name. You can't give me his nickname.
Chris Christie.
Right, or as our good friend Ken likes to call him, Krispy Kreme. In a blowout.
Kreme. I'm sorry, did you say his shirt had a blowout?
Yeah. The button came off at 400 miles an hour. Who am I to talk, though? Chris Christie
thought it was an active shooter event, but it wasn't. Fortunately, it hit one of his security detail who had a vest on.
Well, everyone kind of knew going into it that he was going to win the landslide. Here's something that's amazing, and somebody else brought this up, I think, when I was listening to Ken's show earlier tonight in his chat room. You didn't see one prominent Democrat even try to go to New Jersey and get the Democrat elected. And that's very telling, is it not?
Yeah, because they really like how New Jersey's going right now with the Democrat that's in office.
Absolutely. So why would they try to upset what's going on?
Exactly. What's the problem?
Well, and I laugh because people they're like, well, you have these RINO conservatives who are like, oh, he set up perfectly for 2016, and this shows you that he's the type of guy you need to get those independents and those, maybe moderate Democrats over to the right and vote. Listen.
No, he's not. He'll get the liberals to vote.
they reelected him. First of all, they reelected him in New Jersey because there was nobody else. The other guy running was a nobody. So that's reason number one. The incumbent always has the advantage. That's reason number two. Reason number three that he'd be an awful choice for 2016 is he's Chris Christie. And as we've seen the last 2 years, he's become more about his political career and his political future than anything else. You know, yeah, he's...
Okay, I have a little different take on it. You there?
Well, he's done some good things budgetary-wise in that state that's specific to that state. He has taken on some unions in the past. I think that maybe for that state he might be okay, but that doesn't mean he's going to be a good conservative to run in 2016.
He will not. I don't believe he's a good conservative to run for 2016. I believe he's a good Republican for New Jersey. Right? That's like saying a good Republican for California. Okay, we have Governor, or Massachusetts. We have Governor Brown in California, and he has been pretty fiscally conservative, with the exception of the $65 billion train he wants to put in.
But the train to the desert.
Right. But he's been fairly fiscally conservative. He's actually accomplished some pension reform and so forth. Now he's socially very liberal on a lot of things.
Liberal. But he signed that bill that essentially let I think interns and janitors to perform abortions. So that tells you where he stands on that.
Yeah, he when he was Attorney General, he actually filed a lawsuit and a brief with the United States Supreme Court versus a major video game company that was marketing violent video games to minors. So he has some conservative veins in him. Whatnot. Most of them are fiscal, and I believe Christie is. I liken him to Governor Brown. Maybe not as extreme on abortion or some of the other issues, but he's definitely not what we would consider to be a good conservative to run for president of the United States. Is he as conservative a person you're going to get in New Jersey or California or Massachusetts, as you pointed out? Yeah.
Yes.
He probably is. But that doesn't mean he's good for... What's that?
Growing up in the Northeast and growing up in Boston, he's the equivalent of a right-wing extremist in their opinion, in the average everyday citizen's opinion, because they are so far left.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and look, people in New Jersey like him, and if he does a good job for the people in his state, that's fine by me. That's that state's right. That is that state's choice. And look, if they want to elect him governor of New Jersey, I support him in that. But I would not support him in a Republican primary running for a presidential seat. And look, I don't think the focus of the conservative effort, we talked about this last week, I don't believe the focus of the conservative effort should be federal seats. I believe the focus right now should be on state elections so that the states can call a constitutional convention.
Yeah, I agree, and that was Agenda 17 that we discussed last week. It was a brilliant idea that you came up with. I have to give you full credit yet again. So moving on to Virginia.
I could not be the first one to think about that.
McAuliffe, allegedly, going into Virginia, was polling 10 points ahead of Ken Cuccinelli, and it came within 2.5% roughly. Huge referendum on Obamacare?
I think so, but I think what you're going to see, and we've already started to see it a little bit, it is, especially for the state of Virginia, right, which used to be red, but it's really been more purple recently, and maybe even leaning towards blue because you have the D.C. suburbs and just those densely populated pockets. Most of the state is red geographically, but again, we have to know that the one small pocket that's kind of controlling things for the entire state. I think that some people may try and say, see, if we had a true Republican and not a Tea Party candidate, we would have taken Virginia. I think that argument will come out if it hasn't already. I've kind of been away from the news cycle for the last 24 hours or so, 24 to 48 hours. But I look at it a different way. Look, I think in Virginia, the fact that a Tea Party candidate came that close and closed the gap that much with a Democrat in the gubernatorial election there, I think that speaks volumes to the fact that the Tea Party and Tea Party candidates are actually gaining momentum and credibility and actually stand a chance. Look, if you're within 2 points, you got a pretty good shot at winning. And if this time around, I think the Tea Party can pick up even more steam and gain some elections, especially in other states that are not Virginia. I look to Montana and some of the other states there. So that's my take on it. But 2.5 points, I don't know if it's close enough to trigger an automatic recall. But we know the Democrats are dirty in elections. We know that. That's been shown time and time again. So
yeah, well,
2.5
I'll be interested to see if there was 103% people voting in Fairfax County.
Exactly. And that's kind of my point here. I think that the election, especially being that close, somebody needs to take a really good look at it to make sure it's on the up and up. And look, if the Democrat won in a fair election, then hey, God bless him. I wish him the best, not to accomplish his progressive liberal agenda, but as far as being safe, I guess. But if it's shown that there was some foul play, and Coochie maybe should have got the nod, then I think that's a different story. But I think it's close enough to be looked at, especially given the history of the Democrats in elections.
Right, and especially because the other side was backed none other than by the Clintons, and we know what political shenanigans they've been up to in the past. So
I want to know when the book's coming out. That's what I want to know.
I know, I do too. I'll have to ask our friend Tammy. Hey, so while I have you on the line, we're talking about the Virginia elections. I'm going to bring Rooster in, who wrote a great article today, and we're going to talk about that for a minute. And I also think our good friend Ken is on hold. So stand by for a second.
Red, white, and blue. That's a joke, son. A flag waver.
Our good friend Rooster from ConservativeOutcry.net joins us. Rooster, how are you, sir?
I warn you, I am a troubled man, and I dislike the TSA.
Rooster, how are you, my friend?
I'm going to put you on hold then. Next, no. Come on now, be nice.
I don't shoot them now. Here's what I do, and Clint, since you're flying right now, here's a good way to toy with the NSA. Right before you go through the security X-ray machines, flip to a Maxim. Maxim magazine, and then walk through the X-ray machine and just look at their faces.
Right, it would be a mix between envy and embarrassment on my part.
Well, the other thing too is, and I'm one of those people. Listen, I am not a fan of the TSA at all, by their existence. As I talked about on Twitter this week earlier, is I think it should go back to what it was when it was private years ago. There was a guy on that was saying, in the early 80s when it was private security, they had police officers in the airport, but private security did the majority of the work, and they were all armed, all of them. So, I remind people that if the TSA went away tomorrow, you'd still have to go through metal detectors, and body scans now that they're out there would happen, all that stuff, right, wrong, or indifferent. But the other side, I know it's wrong, but they're still there, and it would be used, and it's going to be used. It doesn't matter who's manning it. I in some way, do feel bad for the TSA employees, the regular people that are working there, and I'll tell you why. Because they have to deal with people like me, Clint, and Rooster on a regular basis. Because we're not the only ones that think of this stuff. I like to yell into my phone, which isn't even calling anybody. I don't know if I could do this. It just bothers me too much, and then get in line to get on.
Listen, I think that they know the job going into it. right? Kind of like cops and firefighters and soldiers and so forth. They know the job when you go into it, so it's not that I necessarily feel bad for them. I like it when they're body scanning me. I like making eye contact with them and licking my lips. That's just something that I do. But you got to pick like the most manly looking buffed out one there, and walk by slowly and like blow a kiss and a wink, and the expression on their face is just priceless.
And I've just given you an added gift.
An added bonus.
Do the same thing with
you
the
have,
bonus.
but the problem is the Maxim has very attractive women in it, so I may need to find like a Men's Health or something to read when I do that to make them really uncomfortable. And what's even better is when I say, "What? No pat down? Are you serious?" And they just shoot me through. Look, it works every time. It's hilarious.
Hey, Clint, Sean brought me on for a reason. Actually, I'm going to be serious.
No, you're not.
I really am going to be serious because I read a very serious article.
9 minutes left in the segment. We're going to be serious quick.
Okay, we'll be serious quick. So, Agenda 17.
Yes,
Your Agenda 17. Okay, so let's talk about Virginia. And we'll talk about Northern Virginia, the suburbs that Sean was referring to earlier. Do you know what the spread was in those suburbs?
I don't know, but I'd love to see pictures.
More than 100,000 votes. You can't
it was
be
like
serious
20%,
for a second,
wasn't it?
can you? Yeah.
No, he can't himself.
It was what?
It was more than 100,000 votes. Okay. McAuliffe picked up more than 100,000 votes just in that section alone. Toss in the Hampton Roads area, which is the other area where there's a big conglomeration of federal workers, and he wins the election. So let me ask you this.
Mm-hmm.
Why shut down the government when you know in the end that you're not going to get any concession whatsoever?
Who shut down the government, though, Rooster? It wasn't the conservatives in Congress. They put 4 different plans through, right? The first one had no chance of passing.
The first one had absolutely no chance of passing.
Correct.
But
they did it to say they could do it.
So they float that, and the government shuts down, and
now
you've given...
It did not shut down until the 4th one was passed, and all they said is, listen, we're delaying it for businesses. Let's delay it for the individuals. It's not ready.
Okay.
That's very reasonable, and I think that they thought they actually had a shot at that one because it is very reasonable.
And they probably did have a shot had they started with that. But now hear me out. Mm-hmm. Now, if you're on the other side,
mm-hmm.
and you've got the potential of a government shutdown, and the Republicans are saying they're going to do it,
mm-hmm.
and you've got Virginia hanging
mm-hmm.
in a very close race, why not
mm-hmm.
shut it down? Because Obamacare is about to roll out, and it keeps Obamacare out of the papers. Could you imagine another 2 weeks of Obamacare carrying the headlines, what it would have done for Cuccinelli's campaign?
I don't, but here's why I don't necessarily know that. Look, 24 hours is a lifetime in the political world, right? A week is an eternity in the political world, and this shutdown was over. It was over, and Obama was in the headlines, and Cuccinelli was gaining ground. I don't believe federal workers are unionized. I don't believe that a lot of them vote conservative.
You'd be surprised because Fairfax County actually went red. Bob McDonald, is that his name? Won 59% of the vote.
But if the Tea Party didn't do anything, they would lose the support of their conservative base. I still think the Tea Party is getting stronger, and the fact that a Tea Party candidate, the fact that Cuccinelli finished as strong as he did when he did, sends a huge message. I think if the Tea Party would have relented and nothing would have been done, they didn't float anything, or maybe they floated something weak out there at first, I think the Tea Party would have lost steam at its base.
And everything you just said is in my article.
And I think I haven't arrived, I've been out of the news cycle for the last 24 to 48 hours because of where I am and what I'm doing. But this is this is something that I think the Tea Party actually long-term will win, even though maybe they lost Virginia perhaps as a result of the shutdown.
Well, let's look at it this way, too. The Democrats who, blamed the Tea Party for the shutdown, who had, like you said, 4 different chances to vote it through, may very well, as we've said in the past, wanted this Tea Party, wanted this shutdown just for that reason. So it's fresh in the minds. They knew Obamacare was going to be a disaster. I mean, we're going to talk about Obamacare a little bit on the other side, but the day before the website was going to roll out, they knew the website would only handle a maximum of 1,100 users a day. That's the day before it rolled out. So they needed that distraction. They needed that because they know what a huge swing Virginia is, and they know that it was going to – I really think if you didn't have the shutdown and there were those people who were affected on it that would vote on a motion alone, if you didn't have that shutdown, I do think that it could have changed the numbers, maybe not significantly, but enough. And I also do think, though, that the Democrats putting that third party up, and I bet you follow that money trail, and our friend Greg from Jump Vote and Voters Trust is actually working on that to see trying to find out where his money came from. I think it may not have changed it, but it would have been close enough that they would have done a physical recount.
Okay, well, here's something else. If we wouldn't have had the shutdown and the Tea Party didn't force what they forced in order to bring it to that point, again, they may have won the battle and taken Virginia, but I think with the damage that would have been done to the support of the Tea Party, I think it would have injured the Tea Party enough to where it could have become really obsolete or insignificant because the base would have been so pissed off at them for not really trying.
But what I'm saying, Clint, is I think you're missing my point. What I'm saying is the second vote that was put forward to keep the government open that we all agree was a very reasonable request.
Yes.
I think the Democrats didn't do it because it was a reasonable request or unreasonable. They did it for politics. They did it to try to spin the shutdown on the Tea Party and the Conservatives. Sure. That's what I'm saying. And I think overall, you're right. It's going to bite them in the ass because that's never going to overshadow this disaster that is Obamacare, which is our next segment. But I think go ahead.
No, I was going to say I agree with you on that. I did misunderstand your point. I agree with you on that aspect. And here's what it has allowed them to do. And here's where the Democrats shot themselves in the foot. And then we can go to break and get into Obamacare in the next segment. But here's where they shot themselves in the foot. They had the opportunity to delay this for a year. That was given to them by the Tea Party caucus and the Republicans.
Yes.
They failed to do so. It's a disaster. Now the Republicans and specifically the Tea Party can point that out, and the Democrats own that. And they're going to have it hung around their neck, and they're going to have to wear that going into the midterm elections and again in 2016. And I think the Democrats, they may have won the battle in Virginia, like we talked about, the Tea Party would have won the battle, but I think ultimately they end up, hurting themselves long term.
Yeah, but with the shutdown, Clint, with the shutdown, Virginia became in play again, and once they shut it down and Virginia was out there for the taking, there was no way an agreement would be met until the very last minute, because now they had their chance to put something else in the headlines. All I'm arguing is that it was, and I've said it before to you that I think Boehner misplayed his hand. Ted Cruz, God bless his soul, but even he admitted that it was never going to happen. He simply wanted to put it out in the forefront and get people talking about it. He knew that he didn't have the votes. He didn't have the ammo to defund it.
True, but it did energize the Tea Party's base to the point where I think they're going to come out stronger, and it worked out in the end due to the fact that now that Obamacare is such a disaster on the rollouts, the Democrats own it. They had a reasonable chance to delay it. They failed to do so. I think long term it's a win for the Tea Party and for the Republicans for that. They may have taken a loss in the short term in Virginia, but going into 2014, 2016, I think they're in a much better position now.
And we come to the same conclusion Just,
That's because
just
we're
a
awesome,
different.
Rooster.
Yeah, we do, because I said the same thing basically in my article, and you should read it. But the problem is you've given up Virginia, and the states do still wield a bit of power.
They do, but look, sometimes you lose a couple in the war.
I understand.
Well,
I understand, but Virginia's not one you want to lose.
I also think, too, though, if you're a conservative strategist on top of Obamacare, you're going to bring up Virginia for the next year, and you're going to turn around and say, hey, listen, Democrats knew this rollout was going to be atrocious. They absolutely forced the shutdown for political gain. They had to win Virginia. They knew they needed Virginia. They needed that headline because they needed to find some good, because everything right now on their side is falling apart. And that now we can turn around and say that shutdown, and maybe the one in January, if it happens, is forced by our friends on the left, quote unquote.
I wouldn't bring up Virginia again if the Democrats bring it up. So you won that state. What are you talking about?
You know what I would bring up? Mitch McConnell's dam, and I wonder what he's going to get on January 15th to broker another deal, and the $174,000 gratuity to Senator Dolphinberg's widow. I keep bringing that up and tell everybody about the party of fiscal conservancy. Let that go through.
Yeah,
absolutely. I agree. That needs to be brought up. And, again, our good friend Greg over at Jump Vote is working on those as well. Hey, Rooster, from ConservativeOutcry.net, we got to take a break, sir. Thank you so much for joining us. Check out his article.
Thank you, Rooster.
Go to ConservativeOutcry.net. Make sure you click on all of his nice little clickies on the side and help him out, because he's a true patriot and a great friend of the show. Rooster, thank you again, sir.
Well, one of yours is one of my clickies.
I know. That's why I want people to click on it.
It doesn't pay me anything, but you click on yours.
We'll be back in 3 with the Sackheads Radio Show.
All right, bye, guys. Bye, Rooster.
Hey, if you care about what's going on in the world, you cannot afford to miss my show. Hi, this is Andrea Kaye, your host of The Andrea Kaye Show. It's not always about the money. Okay, it is always about the money, but it's also about politics, pop culture, and you. The only thing street about this show is the smarts. There's a reason they call me Dynamite in a Dress. And you'll find out why when you listen Tuesday mornings at 10 on Financial News and Talk.
Hello, I'm Paul, a student at Hillsdale College. Here is my professor, Dr. Larry Arnn, on the separation of church and state.
America's founders believed in the separation of church and state, in that the country was not to have an official religion or an official sect. But that did not mean that government was to be hostile to religion, or even indifferent to religion, as many today argue. In fact, America's founding document, the Declaration of Independence, includes both a reference to God as the author of the laws of nature and a confident assertion that human beings are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Far from being hostile or indifferent to religion, America's founders understood the theology of the Declaration to be an essential part of the education of citizens.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.org.
How you doing? John Grant here. When I'm not slaving over a hot microphone on the 405radio.com Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern, I check out Sean and Clint here at Sackheads Radio. We all appreciate the best political bloggers, writers, and commentators. We either get them on our shows or we make fun of them, as it should be. So check us out live Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern or forever on the podcasts on the 405radio.com.
Hey folks, it's Sean from Sackheads Radio. As a native Bostonian, my heart broke on April 15, 2013, watching those horrendous attacks at the Boston Marathon. Now there's a way that you can help. Go to onefundboston.org, onefundboston.org, where you can donate to help the victims and families from this awful attack. Onefundboston.org, all the proceeds will go directly to the victim's family. Thank you very much from Sackheads Radio.
Now back to Clint and Sean on Sackheads Radio, radiating urgency and quality.
No, I tell you, I'm gonna smoke a lot of crack and then run for a mayor up in Canada. I think I can do it.
You know,
I think that's a shoe-in.
I've never smoked crack before, but I can see myself doing it and running for mayor in Canada.
Welcome back
and then
to
keeping my job.
Part 4 of tonight's Sackheads Radio Show. 347-205-9399. Yes.
People that smoke crack never sing the national anthem.
Hey, you can always smoke crack and run for the mayor of D.C. All you need is a few prostitutes in your room. Speaking of which, Ken from the Exceptional Conservative Show is joining us on the line right now. Hey, Ken, how are you, buddy?
I'm just fine. My name's Jonathan Martin, and I've been bullied.
Well,
hey, Ken, I want to apologize, Ken, for my partner and how racially insensitive he is, in that he said crack cocaine and insinuated that you were somehow involved because you're black. So I want to apologize for that.
And especially when he used the term Negro. That is so passe.
Hey, Ken, I'm still trying to get a good intro for you, and so far this is the best one that I can come up with.
We ain't found shit.
Now, I don't know. I can't find
I'm going to tell you. The best movie ever made was Blazing Saddles. And the best line out of Blazing Saddles is, "Where the white women at?" That's my...
Cleveland Little, that whole movie, front to back, was just a brilliant movie. And I agree. That and when Gene Wilder has it by the scruff, and he's like, "Oh, boys, look at what he has." Just that whole setup. And on Cleveland Little's face as he pulls him out, he was a genius actor. That part was written for him. Mel Brooks just nailed it with that movie. I mean, he's nailed it with a bunch of movies, but that is one of my all-time favorite movies of his.
You know what? You should try and make that movie today. Try and do a Blazing Saddles remake today.
Well, we will. I don't know. At CPAC next year, we're going to play Blazing Saddles.
I would love that. I would love that. Yes. If you watch the movie and you can't find the comedy in that movie and how well it's done, you're have no right laughing ever again.
I agree.
So is Sackhead going to CPAC this year?
Ooh, that might be something we'll have to discuss. All right, but we're crashing against
You really should. Listen, we're going to have Rob Ford in, Marion Barry. You bring your own crack, we got a party.
Hey, so
you don't have to be politically correct.
Since when are we ever? Sebelius is in front of the Senate. Hey.
You know what? The name Sebelius sounds like a Greek mythological monster, like three-headed dragon thing. Did you fight the Sebelius? I have, you know.
Wasn't that? I think Sebelius, isn't that through the root word meaning kraken? Isn't that all the same?
Sebelius is in fact Latin from the root word jalapeno, meaning kraken. So
y'all know what that's.
You're absolutely right.
Well, you know, actually, I thought it was ghetto from the free clinic, but never mind. I'm sorry.
Does she have a disease named after her?
I'm sorry, fellas, but I've got to tell you, son, you have Sebelius.
Son, the only way to treat the Sebelius is to insert this glass rod and inject the medication through that.
Which is essentially what she does every single day she goes to work. Here's Sebelius on the Senate Finance Committee today.
I'm never going to.
I do feel that there is no excuse for what has been a miserable 5 weeks. I am committed to the fix of the website. On the other hand, I do know that people are using it every day, and the experience is getting better every day. So again, encouraging.
Like crack?
folks to use the website, use the call center, enroll in person at a health center, find a navigator in the neighborhood.
She wants you to walk down the street just yelling navigator at the top of your lungs until one shows up to sign you up for Obamacare.
There's a lot of navigators in my neighborhood.
Hang on a second. She nowhere in her statement did she say healthcare website. Just add porn in front of website and in front of navigator and people having a better experience and the phone number, and you have a completely different experience.
So not a lot new came out today, but there was Senator Roberts I think he's from Oklahoma, once again requested for her resignation. He had a pretty strong statement, and I really enjoyed the statement, and I think you'll like it as well.
In short, Madam Secretary, I believe you were given advice, counsel, and warning from experts inside your agency and out that the health care exchanges were not going to be ready. Furthermore, I believe to protect the administration, you chose to ignore these warnings, and as a result, you have put our entire health care system and 1/6 of our economy in jeopardy. Now, people are angry. Millions of Americans are scared. They don't know whether they're going to have coverage in a matter of weeks. They don't know what their coverage will include. They now are getting letters from their insurance companies they don't understand. In fact, more people are losing their insurance than are signing up on the website. And they are being directed to a website that doesn't even work. Now, we don't often talk about life and death in the context it deserves. But at this time, it is real. And it means the difference between life and death for many Americans who are at a loss for what to do. And we know, Madam Secretary, that fixing the website won't ever fix the uncertainty and the ramifications that result from this law. So I have to wonder if you have any regrets at all, that you failed to heed the warnings, that you ignored the calls from members of Congress, you proceeded to open the exchanges on October 1, immediately followed by a taxpayer-funded promotional tour to tell everyone, quote, it's sort of a great problem to have. Well, Kansans don't think these are great problems to have. From your hometown of Topeka, Stephen wrote, I am completely disgusted. I've spent the last 2 days trying to get my application through. This would not be a critical issue, except the insurance coverage that I currently have is going away because of the new federal requirements. Though we were promised if you like your current coverage, you can keep it. Madam Secretary, you yourself know that this law has serious problems. You delayed over half of the mandate deadlines. You did it for employers, for unions, and for small business, but not for the exchanges, and not for Stephen, nor for millions of other Americans who are losing their health care, and their worry and their fear are palpable. Your main goal should have been to protect Americans, to lessen their risk, and to ensure their safety. But in your zeal to implement this law, not warnings, not advice, not counsel, would deter you from implementing the exchanges. You have said America should hold you accountable, which is why today, Madam Secretary, I repeat my request for you to resign. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I
was thinking that same thing.
I expected them at the end of that to say, and this is Walter Cronkite.
Good night, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate it.
I don't even work for you. You can't tell me to resign. This is a government job. Shit, I had to fill out my application and everything. That's not even my job description to the website.
Oh, God, I'm trying to say all joking aside, but this is the same woman who said, I don't work for those people when she was talking about people asking her to resign. And I'm like, yeah, you do. But I think the senator nailed it right there. I think that in 2.5 minutes, he pretty much summed up the entirety of it. Unless there's something I'm missing, Clint.
Sean, I think what you're missing is the fact that Ken nailed it right there. Because I literally pictured his face as like a weave bopping back and forth while he was off on the tirade. It's awesome.
But in all seriousness, those who are
great.
That's to the best in late night conservative talk.
Did I just hit the commercial button?
Yeah, gotta throw that in there.
I
Every
love
moment
it every single time you do
is
it.
an advertising moment.
I got to remember to start writing down whenever you say that. 195 million people are projected to lose their current plans in the next year and a half.
I thought you were going to say we're projected to listen to Sackheads Radio tonight. I apologize. What were you saying?
That's how many were projected. We'll check the numbers and see how many showed up. I can tell you this: we can handle more listeners than the Obamacare website.
You probably can. No.
So,
wasted RINO could probably handle more.
Hey, all the rhinoceroses, yeah.
Sean, the fact that you can handle more listeners than the Obamacare website is the reason you need health care.
Pull up to the button, baby.
That brings up... We all know the website's still a disaster, and the website's been a focal point of this whole Obamacare problem, as well as everyone losing their health care and the president lying and Jay Carney defending him and everyone else going out and defending him. Carney had an interesting back and forth with an ABC reporter, Jeff Rosen. I was going to clip this, but I'm going to play it in its entirety because I want you to just hone in on what a complete D-bag Jay Carney is. This is what happens when you hire somebody from Time Magazine to be a press secretary.
But Jay, I want to go back to exactly...
That would be that tone I'm talking about.
I want to go back to exactly what the president said. He said you can bypass the website and apply by phone or in person, and it can be done in 25 minutes. But these memos say that at the end of the day, we are all stuck in the same queue because they all have to go through the same portal.
John, I get it. But the person who calls isn't the one who continues to wait after the paper application is filled.
Right? Your mocking is entertaining, but the president said that you could apply within 25 minutes. That was not true.
The work that you do, I think everybody else is looking quizzically because there's a reason to be quizzical here. You call up, you give your information, you get the questions answered that you need answered, and then they take over from there. And then you find out, what you're eligible for, and the process goes forward.
25 minutes?
No, once your process, once your application is processed. The point was to relieve some of the frustration that Americans were understandably experiencing, and if it's an individual, roughly this is on average, the interaction you have when you give the information and you bypass the creation of an account and you sign up, so that you didn't have to do that online. And then to enroll, obviously you would give in the information you need. That would be processed. You would find out how much you qualified for, and you could be enrolled that way. But obviously, but John, we have never said that you wouldn't, that the endpoint of the process wouldn't still have to go through healthcare.gov. So this is not.
That's exactly what you said. You said to sidestep healthcare.gov, you could go to the phones, you could go to the navigators, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. When will somebody throw a shoe at this guy?
Well, actually, they came up with a better suggestion earlier today, and this is what Kathleen Sebelius is not getting credit for. Speaking with John Kerry earlier today, you know how he came up with the idea for Syria. He suggested 8-track tape enrollment. So it's for all those people who still have 8-track tape.
I got a record player.
The other thing,
Now,
the other
Ken,
thing, too, that you have to notice with Carney is... I'm hanging on.
Okay, I was going to say 8-track tape is ridiculous. You're being silly. Reel-to-reel is much more effective.
That is so true.
You say what you want, the more putting it in.
Sending the telegraph.
Absolutely.
Okay, for all Redskin fans, there is some Indian on the reservation that uses smoke signals to enroll in Obamacare. There you go.
I think one of the cute things that Carney says, and this is something that I've heard out of a lot of people in this administration and the left that's pushing this care, every time they talk about signing up, they always throw in and see how much you qualify for, as if everybody qualifies for some sort of subsidy, And that is just not true. And that's
well,
something that I wish...
That is true because the government sometimes qualifies for the subsidy, right? You sometimes have to pay more than you thought, and you weren't going to get anything. So somebody is qualifying for something. It may just not be you.
Exactly. And I think that's a great opening for casinos gambling now. I mean, enroll in Obamacare and see what you're going to get. Roll the winner.
That would have been a better way to roll things out. Hey, folks, take your EBT card, go to the nearest casino, and go to the Obamacare sign-up roulette, where you can just swipe your card, you pick your plan, and you hope the wheel lands on it.
There you go.
How about this one? Ladies and gentlemen, step up. If you're actually able to sign up for health care, we'll give you $100,000. Pay $100 for a chance.
And I was like, the other thing is, I'm really upset with Kathleen Sebelius because, and this is the problem with government, knowing that it didn't work, she doesn't have any advertisements on that site. Do you know how much money they could be making off of advertising with people staring at that screen, trying to enroll in the program for hours on end? I mean, you got Amazon, Overstock, Nike, hey, Sears. You could have been people could have done their Christmas shopping on this particular thing. Get rid of government.
If you had it run through Groupon and Amazon, it would have worked fantastic. You know what I mean? Maybe that's what they should do. They should do a Groupon Obamacare.
I figured it out. Here's why. They set up the Obamacare website through Blog Talk.
Right. The same geniuses that came up with the Blog Talk interface for us are the same ones that set up OCare.
We have some extra dollars.
They said SACHEADS is so good that we're going to set the healthcare system up on what SACHEADS uses.
Oh, man.
We should have said, you know what? We should have called the feds immediately when this site crashed and said, we're sending you Sacco. And we should have threw him on a plane and sent him out there. Now, granted, he probably wouldn't have made it past the security check.
No,
you know what I mean?
Actually, Sacco could be a navigator after all the felony crimes he's committed. He qualifies to be a navigator.
I thought I was going to get off the hook today, No,
you never get off the hook.
Almost out of the show, and I wasn't made fun of yet. I thought it was good. But
sorry, kid. It had to happen. No. Actually, judging by some people in the Obama administration, namely the one that's in, Homeland Security, Sacco could probably get a position in this government.
Well, listen, I don't know. Do you ever see the Star Trek episode, The Trouble with Tribbles? Sacco looks like a tribble. Okay.
I'm sorry, Sacco. You almost made it. You were 9 minutes away. Dog.
We joke because we love. At least that's the one I'm going with.
We're fond of you. Kind of like the pedophiles are in the park.
They're the one. Usually they vote Democrat for the record. 195 million people are going to lose their personal coverage and be forced into the exchanges. You have 80% of the people that are signing up for Medicaid. You have a lot of people who are elected to take the $95 fine this year just because. Now there's talk about pushing off the individual mandate. If they don't get people signing up soon, as in yesterday or October 1st maybe, all the money projections that they had on how it's going to pay for itself and then more and blah, 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 is going to come to a ridiculous crashing halt. At what point does the GOP really need to start taking on that aspect alone?
Now.
Now. I think the GOP should be silent from this point on. Don't say another word. All right, don't vote for nothing. Don't say another word. Just let that baby crash and burn. Nothing like watching it crash and burn, like Detroit.
Detroit, a prime example of what happens when you let Democrats run everything.
There you go.
There you go. It's nothing wrong with watching Grandma struggle on her Medicare card now trying to find her doctor. You know, that's the way we should go.
Hey, right, Obama said it best, right? Give her a pain pill.
There you go. Aspirin. Get over it.
Right? Give her pain medication.
Exactly.
You got cancer, Grandma?
Yeah.
No, we don't want Grandma to feel anything. Now, I also, though, I bring up, you know, playing devil's advocate. There are those in the GOP who, whether they're doing it for this reason or not, are going to say, well, now that we're stuck with it and all my constituents are losing the health care that they once paid for, we need to fix this or they're all going to be without health care at all.
Yeah.
And how do you...
Or we need to replace it, right? We need to repeal the law we have and replace it. And constituents, in order to do that, we need your support and your votes.
Listen, Obama and Harry Reid will do nothing with this plan. They will not delay the. I know what they said earlier on the news or whatever, but financially, you need the individual mandate. You need the 7 million people in order for this policy scheme to work. They will not delay it. If you delay the individual mandate, the whole caboodle falls to the earth. It crashes and it burns. So that individual mandate is it. It's the most important piece of the entire puzzle. They are not going to relent. They're not going to let that go. That's possibly happening. They might delay penalties or absolve people of penalties, but they're not going to let go of that individual mandate.
You know what, Ken, and a couple of things. First of all, there are a number of lawsuits, again, over Obamacare, so the Supreme Court may get another crack at it, number one.
You said crack.
I said crack. And number two, I wouldn't be surprised if the Democrats try and push a law either saying insurance companies cannot drop people or even after they drop them, continue some form of coverage or payment for any current treatment until they're able to enroll in a new plan.
Well, there's already a dingbat representative who, when a conservative, and I forget her name, but when a conservative tried to push that through like 6 months ago, saying, hey, this isn't ready, you guys know this isn't ready, we got to do something, even a temporary fix, she voted against it, and now, and I think she's up for re-election next year, go figure, now that it's to this point, yes, she's come out with that exact plan, Clint, saying, oh, no, wait, my constituents need this, and blah, 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 when she already voted against it once. And that shows you just how insane it is.
Yeah, and they're going to make those private insurance companies eat the cost on this. Or how long till they say, you know what, well, the private insurance won't eat the cost on it because they're a private entity, so you, the taxpayer, we're going to eat the cost on this. We are going to insure coverage. We are going to be self-insured, and that's my point, right? Now they're billing, hey, you know what, you're uninsured. Instead of going to the ER, now, hey, you know what, just you're uninsured, give them this code or whatnot, and federal government will insure. It's almost like we're a self-insured nation, right? Single payer, just until we get things up and running.
I think, and then they're going to turn around and say, well, the single payer works so well, maybe we should start looking at doing that. That's going to be their plan. Sacco had a question. I want to let him chime in.
All right, so I wanted to ask, okay, so there's a big deal about people who already have insurance and how their bills are getting canceled, right? Because they pay for their treatments and the current plans don't cover what they need, or they give them use of stuff that they don't want to pay for, that they have to pay for. Okay, so people are upset about their current plans and being lied to about, Obama said that we could keep our current plans. But what about the new guys that eventually get old, like me, that may end up needing some type of health care that existed 2 years ago that is no longer going to exist?
Yeah, your host.
I can't be grandfather to a plan that doesn't exist anymore.
No.
So I'm
you're screwed.
Regardless.
You're actually, I'll tell you right now, Sacco, your age, and you're a healthy guy, you're the one that's going to be footing this bill for a long time. Ken Clinton and I will be footing a little bit less than you, but you're the one that's getting the biggest hose out of all of this, And, by the way,
Taco.
don't expect Social Security. Yeah, thanks, Taco. We have 60 seconds left in the show. Thank you very much, Ken, for joining us tonight. Ken from the Exceptional Conservative Show. Check him out Monday through Thursday. Don't miss a show. You're going to be missing so much.
All right. Thank you. God bless.
Take care, my friend.
Thank you. Hey, Clint, our 2 hours is up. It's sad, but this just means that you can go back to what you were doing, and I don't want to out you, but
already. Listen, what I'm about to do is I'm about to go have a drink.
Where?
Because after dealing with those two callers, I think I need one. Do we have any Southern California listeners?
I think we do, and we're going to run a few minutes over here, but we do have some Southern California listeners. Why do you ask, pray tell?
Would anybody want, do you think, have a drink with me? Just one?
Just one. I bet you if you can find, I bet you yes. Well, where are you? We'll send them to you.
Listen, the first listener that finds me, almost like a Where's Clint, like almost like a Where's Waldo, I am going to have a drink. I'm going to walk over to the Biltmore Hotel in downtown Los Angeles and have a drink at the bar. I'll be there from 10 to 11, and the first person that finds me, I will buy a drink.
First person that finds Clint will get a drink. Outstanding. Between 10 and 11 p.m. Pacific time tonight, go meet Sackhead Clint if you can find him. Hey, Clint, we will see you next week. Safe travels home, buddy. Sacco is warming up your seat now for next week.
Yeah, that's great.
I appreciate it.
Hey, tonight's closing before our theme, it's just a little collage of Obama saying you can keep your health care, but there's an interesting one at the very end that came out this week. So enjoy. We'll see you next Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Pacific time, here on the Sackheads Radio Show. Check out our website, sackheadsradio.com. We are on Facebook and Twitter. Also going up tonight on the website, you'll be able to pick up the poll. What is the federal government going to try to privatize next? We're going to run that for a week. We'll give you your answers next Wednesday night. Tune in. Thank you very much. Jessica on the phone, Sacco on the board, Sackhead Sean, Sackhead Clint down at the Biltmore Hotel here in the next 10 minutes in L.A. Go see him. Talk to you soon.
I said this once or twice, but it bears repeating. And you can keep your plan if you are satisfied with it. If you like the plan you have, you can keep it. If you like your plan and you like your doctor, you won't have to do a thing. You keep your plan. If you like your health care plan, you'll be able to keep your health care plan. If you've got health insurance, you can keep it. If you like your health care plan, you will keep your plan. If you've got health insurance, you like your doctor, you like your plan, you can keep your doctor, you can keep your plan. If you have insurance that you like, then you will be able to keep that insurance. If you like your doctor or health care plan, you can keep it. If you like your health care plan, you can keep your health care plan. If you like your health care plan, you can keep your health care plan. If you like your private health insurance plan, you can keep your plan. If you like your health care plan, you can keep your health care plan. If you like your private health insurance plan, you can keep it. If you want to keep the health insurance you got, you can keep it. If you like the insurance plan you have now, you can keep it. And if you like your insurance plan, you will keep it. So if you like your plan, you can keep your plan. If you like your plan, keep your plan. If you like your current insurance, you will keep your current insurance. If you like your plan, you can keep your plan. If you like your plan, you can keep your plan. If you're happy with what you got, nobody's changing it. Now, if you have or had one of these plans before the Affordable Care Act came into law, and you really liked that plan, what we said was you could keep it if it hasn't changed since the law was passed.